Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Good evening, Malcontents. My name is David. I am the Malcontent, and today is January 18th, 2021, in what may be the longest January in U.S. history. It is just going on and on and on. I'd like to pull in my guest host, Jennifer Smith. Malcontents, her audio is great today. Her video is a little better, but we're still dropping frames. Jennifer and I troubleshooted actually for a period of time before the show. And we also tried a couple of set of different software drivers, and we'll get into all of it. And we're just like, punt, we're going to go with the system that we got. Jennifer, I don't know if you're staying really stationary or if you're frozen on the screen right now, but how are you doing this evening?
I'm frozen on the screen. I just moved a little bit. Yeah, I'm frozen on the screen. I'm pretty tired. And like you said, it feels like the longest January ever. But other than that, I'm hanging in there.
I think we're all hanging in there, Jennifer. And with that, why don't we just go ahead and jump right into it? We've got a lot of stuff, and I'll go ahead and roll the land acknowledgement intro.
All right.
And Jennifer, whenever you're ready.
So we at Malcontent News, we're coming to you from Seattle, Washington. And so we would like to acknowledge the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We acknowledge the past, present, and future of the Duwamish tribe, the Muckleshoot tribe, and other tribes on whose traditional lands we work and live.
Jennifer, thank you so much for that. Malcontents, you're going to have to deal with just a little adjustment to the accoutrements here for a moment. It's a little bit of a byproduct of us trying to get things to work. All right, there we go. Jennifer, you're now framed up properly on the guest cam screen. All right, Jennifer, one hell of a weekend, eh?
Yeah, a lot going on both locally and nationally.
Kind of as we predicted, the right-wing militias and all that were calling for, all of this activity and to, go to their capitals. It's amazing when there's a bunch of National Guard troops and armed state police troopers and FBI is fanning out and arresting dozens and dozens of people. They seem to have lost their bravery and bravado this weekend.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens when you actually get some pushback to your, crazy ideas about overthrowing a government.
What does it say they say about standing up to bullies? And anyway, there was an interesting little factoid that I saw over the weekend. Misinformation on the internet dropped 73%. when Donald Trump's Twitter got yanked down.
I saw that too, and I was like, that has to be like some kind of, I don't know, misprint or something. But I looked at through multiple sources, and yeah, it's accurate. 73%. That's how much influence that misinformation he was pushing out had. And he had to. He was surrounded by enough tech people that he had to have known the kind of scope of that misinformation campaign he was driving. So that's, I'm sure, was a huge hit to whatever plans people were making.
You hear that? That's the sound of Donald Trump not on Twitter. And with that, Jennifer, we're going to go ahead and we'll jump into the first story for the night, which is the reason for the day.
Yes.
There you go, Jennifer. We've got you on Inception Cam.
All right. So today is, of course, Martin Luther King Day. And so I read an article earlier today written by Fabiola Cielos for Vox. And so I had 5 fast facts pulled that I was going to kind of talk about that article. But I wrote something a little different instead because something in that article she wrote actually really resonated with me. And she writes, quote, "This year, those seeking to uphold the hate and bigotry that King vehemently fought against will surely try their hand at rewriting King's story once again, calling for peace and unity in the wake of a riot that sought to overthrow democracy and roll back justice. And America has to see it for what it is, an attack that King would have unequivocally denounced." And so I was perusing social media today, looking at, the ways in which King's words were appropriated by various people on social media, from leaders to just common people posting on social media. And from everything I've seen today, she's right. So I think on this day, it's important not to just reflect on King's legacy, but also for us to acknowledge that King lost his life as a result of white supremacy. The same white supremacy the nation was founded upon, the same white supremacy that justified native dispossession and chattel slavery, the same white supremacy that, when threatened, has historically reacted with physical, verbal, and legislative violence, and the same white supremacy that led to the insurrection at the Capitol last week, and that continues to be a cancer within our society. So King railed against white supremacy, he called out racism, capitalism, and rallied and empowered Black people. And while all the praise for King and his legacy that comes from people in positions of power in the context of unity makes many people feel good, for others it seems disingenuous. At the time of his assassination, King, like many other Black activists during the civil rights era, was not well liked. Black activists fighting for equality were often harassed, condemned as dangerous by government agencies, and seen as a direct threat to white supremacy. This whitewashing of King's legacy, an example of imperialist nostalgia. As anthropologist Renato Rosado explains, imperialist nostalgia revolves around a paradox. A person kills someone and then mourns the victim. Or in a larger context, imperial subjects, and yes, the US is imperial, deliberately alters a form of life and the regrets that things have not remained as they were prior to that intervention. So in conclusion, the paradox here is white supremacy. On one hand, it mourns King, even though it is responsible for his death, while simultaneously lamenting the loss of Jim Crow segregation and slavery, which manifests itself in the ugly right-wing extremist terrorist organizations we see today. Both are dangerous, but as King wrote in his 1963 letters from a Birmingham jail, it is not the radical white terrorists he found most dangerous, but rather the, quote, white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes that he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season, end quote. So, on that note, I think it's time for white supremacy in all of its forms to be held accountable. So rather than parsing a quote from King and posting it on social media to make yourself or someone else feel better, learn about the longer history of white supremacy in the nation, read the hard truths about the lived realities of slavery, racial oppression and violence, and educate yourself about what King and others fought for and what Black, Indigenous people, and people of color are still fighting for today, then it might make more sense as to why something as common sense as equal rights for all, regardless of skin color, has yet to be achieved. And here's a big spoiler alert. It's because white supremacy never intended for it to be.
Yes. Wonderful research there, Jennifer, and really appreciate it. And it is like so many other Black movements and where white people are, they get very performative. I had a phone call today from someone in the business community going, we're starting an initiative in 2021 and, you know, about inclusion and diversity. This isn't at a company, it's at, you know, something bigger than that. And, you know, we have a lot of companies we're working with and you know, like what they're doing is like, oh, we hired a Black person or we put a Black person on our board of directors or right. And they're like, but nothing's changed. It's like, well, no kidding. Nothing's changed. So they actually contacted me looking for advice and resources, which is a good sign. But Jennifer, we saw this after George Floyd died, right? Oh, the hashtag Black Lives Matter. I'm going to make my Instagram black for the day, right? And all this stuff feels really good. Where the hell are all those people now? Because they're certainly not in the streets anymore. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a good sign that people are acknowledging that. But again, it's back to that whole, you know, kind of his understanding of the danger of moderate white people who are like, yeah, we agree with you, but does it have to be right now? So, I mean, and activism takes multiple forms. People can write, they can do art, they can do music, they can go out in the streets. There are many ways to be an activist and an ally, but sitting behind your keyboard and posting a hashtag on social media isn't it.
And on the subject of taking things out of context, we have a clip from 1966 where Dr. Martin Luther King talks about this really misused and misquoted statement he makes about rioting and peaceful protest. It is a tremendous clip, and I'd love to roll it.
Yes.
60 Minutes, rewind.
Now what I'm saying is this. I would like for all of us to believe in nonviolence, but I'm here to say tonight that if every Negro in the United States turns against nonviolence, I'm going to stand up as a lone voice and say this is the wrong way.
I will never change in my basic idea that nonviolence is the most potent weapon available to the Negro in his struggle for freedom and justice. I think for the Negro to turn to violence would be both impractical and immoral.
There is an increasingly vocal minority who disagreed totally with your tactics, Dr. King.
There's no doubt about that. I will agree that there is a group in the Negro community advocating violence now. I happen to feel that this group represents a numerical minority. Surveys have revealed this. The vast majority of Negroes still feel that the best way to deal with the dilemma that we face in this country is through nonviolent resistance. And I don't think this vocal group will be able to make a real dent in the Negro community in terms of swaying 22 million Negroes to this particular point of view. And I contend that the cry of black power is at bottom a reaction to the reluctance of white power to make the kind of changes necessary to make justice a reality for the Negro. I think we've got to see that a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the economic plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years.
How many summers like this one do you imagine that we can expect?
Well, I would say this, we don't have long. The mood of the Negro community now is one of urgency, one of saying that we aren't going to wait, that we've got to have our freedom. We've waited too long. So that I would say that every summer we are going to have this kind of vigorous protest. My hope is that it will be nonviolent. I would hope that we can avoid riots because riots are self-defeating and socially destructive. I would hope that we can avoid riots, but that we will be as militant and as determined next summer and through the winter as we have been this summer. And I think the answer about how long it will take will depend on the federal government, on the city halls of our various cities, and on white America to a large extent. This is where we are at this point, and I think white America will determine how long it will be and which way we go in the future.
Even Senator Jacob Javits asked the question recently. He said that he was a slum resident, but he and some of his fellow Jews were able to make it out of the ghetto on the Lower East Side. The same thing is true with lots of Irish, Italians. And he asked the question why the Negro finds it so difficult to make his way up out of the ghetto.
Well, number one, no other racial group has been a slave on American soil. It's nice to say other people were down and they got up. They were not slaves on American soil. The other thing is that the Negro has had high visibility. And because of the prejudices existing in this country, his color has been against him. It's been against him, and they've used this to keep him from moving up. In the final analysis, when you say to a man that you are in this position because of your race or because of your color, you say to that man that he can never get out of it. Other racial groups have been able maybe to change the accent or change the names, but the Negro can't.
Powerful, powerful interview,
Yep.
Jennifer, and really puts in context his words about a riot being the voice, the language of the unheard.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I think it is. And I think it's important to note too, and going back to that Vox article today, and maybe we can post a link somewhere. There's this real tendency of people, especially people in positions of authority, to kind of parse, and white people too, to parse this particular passage from the I Have a Dream speech, where King is arguing that people should be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, as a way to advocate for colorblindness. When in fact, in that same speech, King clearly articulates how the construct of race shaped the lived experience of Black Americans in very negative ways. So I think it's all too often appropriated for a particular agenda. In this instance, to call for unity after we witnessed this very traumatic event that was really grounded in white supremacist ideology. I'd also think too about this kind of longer history of demonizing Black activists. I mean, if you look back right after World War II, when We Charge Genocide came out in 1951, and it was basically like a lot of Black people going, hey, you're over fighting for, these people to be liberated while you're doing the same kinds of things to Black people within your own borders. And here's this UN definition of genocide. And here's all of the instances where that actually fits in our particular situation. And, and they're being deemed as, basically terrorists. And so, yeah, it's just, I think it's a lot of the stuff that comes out on MLK Day, remembering his legacy and that nostalgia, is just appropriated in very unfortunate ways to fit these very skewed agendas.
One of the things that is saddening for me in that interview is that's almost 54 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the message of it's really up to white America, it's really up to the federal government, it's really up at the local government to tear down. He doesn't use the words institutional racism, but that's really what it just comes down to. It's, his message is we can protest all we want, we can do all these things, but at the end of the day, when we walk down the street, we can't change what we look like. We can't change our skin color, our facial features, our hair, and look, I mean, the history of my name, has changed multiple times. And the spelling of our last name is actually an error because they screwed it up when my family came in. There are lots of people in the United States that go by Smith or Johnson or whatever because they got rid of their Italian or Irish last name because those were racial minority once upon a time.
Yeah, my grandparents immigrated in from Italy at the time where you basically had to, if you wanted to come into America, you had to renounce your Italian citizenship. And so my mother still has the maiden name of Grandinetti. But yeah, it was a very different time. But, you know, going back to like phenotypical features, it was a lot easier for certain populations to become accepted because they shared similar skin color, could blend in or assimilate with white people. And that's not the instance for Black Americans and other people of color. And so they're just continuously fighting for an equality that white supremacy just has no intention of allowing. So the onus then falls on, white people to call this shit out and dismantle it and ally and become, I guess, educators for other white people, because the onus for educating white people about racism shouldn't fall on people of color.
Exactly. Jennifer, thank you for that report. There was a Malcontent who in the comments said, if we ever need any drone footage, let them know. Don't have a specific need today, but the best way to get in touch with us, tips, T-I-P-S, at malcontentment.com. Seriously, shoot us an email, tips at malcontentment.com, and someone on our team will grab it. On the subject of our team, something I've got to do a little plug for the cause. One of the easiest ways you can support us, follow, please follow us on Facebook. We're like jumping up and down right now. Follow us on Facebook. 10,000. It's not like, ooh, we're cloud chasers. We want 10,000. We can do a lot more because of the rules of Facebook if we have 10,000 followers, and we're getting closer. Please follow on Facebook. You can share, you can start a watch party, depending on the channels that you're on. Share watch party on Facebook. If you're on Twitter or Periscope, you can retweet, or on Periscope, you can tweet out and help amplify those Black voices. The other thing is, everybody here is paid with hearts. So if you appreciate our mods, if you appreciate independent media, spam those hearts. If you're on Twitter, Periscope, or Facebook. If you're on YouTube or Twitch, you could just go like, I love you mods, or put hearts. They really do love seeing that, and they make our jobs much, much easier. And with that, we're going to roll our first commercial.
Black Coffee is a hub for communities and a hub for meeting people, making friends, and understanding.
What Black Coffee is to me is a place to actually call home, a place where Black youth will feel welcomed, where Black families will come and feel like they're at home.
What we're trying to build is more than just coffee. Community is something that we do naturally. We know who's in the community, we know what the deficits are, and we're trying to fix that. We want to bring people together.
My hope is that the phrase grounded in excellence shows up everywhere and that it becomes a movement.
I'm looking forward to hanging out at Black Coffee with my friends and feeling safe.
Black Coffee to me means opportunity for people like me and my other friends and family to come here and do homework safely and hang out and stuff like that.
That is happening. It is happening.
Black Coffee Northwest opened back up on Saturday with improved security. Jennifer, they had so many people there on Saturday. They just were basically like, we're staying open until we get everybody through the line. Come on down. And Cairo provided some coverage there and was showing how cars were literally just wrapped around the block down Highway 99.
It was super great to see them getting some extra love after the crap they went through. So I was very glad to see that.
Not on Martin Luther King Day weekend, no less. And by the way, Malcontents, let me remind you, Black Coffee was firebombed on October 1, and King County Sheriff, Shoreline Police Department, 0 arrests, 0 suspects, and sat on that security video for 3 months. Not that there's any institutional racism in the police. Definitely not.
No, not at all.
No, 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 no. Not saying that at all. And with that, we'll go to the second story. You know, Jennifer, if the Seattle Police Department actually was committed to the reform that they say that they're committed to, you could almost feel bad for them for this month of January that they're having. But this is all pretty self-inflicted.
Yeah, absolutely. And boy, I thought I was having a rough January. SPD. Yeah. So 2021 is looking too pretty.
All of this is in the first 18 days of January. All of this. And really, all of this is from January 4 because January 1 was New Year's, 2 and 3 was the weekend. Mm-hmm. So all of this is literally in 2 weeks. First of all, we had Mike Solon retweets of Andy No. We've already discussed all of that. There's been calls for his resignation. Former police chief Carmen Best. The entire city council was originally 8 out of 9. And then the 9th one said, okay, I made a mistake. Yes, he needs to go. And the mayor, as well as the MLK Union. Of course, the MLK Union, I think I'm calling that, I don't think it's MLK Union. It's quite something, I might be getting a little wrong. 100,000, represents 100,000 union workers in Seattle. They kicked them out, clicked the Seattle Police Department out. But that was after years and years and years of pressure to take that action in the first place. Mike Solon has dug in deeper than a tick and a dog in Alabama, saying he's not going to budge. So we have that. Got 2 police officers, we covered that also, who are suspended with pay as the city of Seattle Police Department tries to figure out an OPA if they had any involvement in the insurrection on January 6th. I think it is worth noting they were turned in by fellow officers, which to me is already a blinking red light that there has to be something a little bit more than, hey, we're chilling at the Washington Monument in support of Trump. OPA released a whole bunch of stuff on Friday afternoon. Now, as somebody who has been in marketing for 20 years, when you have bad news that you don't want to get a lot of information out, you release that bad news on Friday afternoon, especially on the news cycle we're having. So by the time you get to Monday, that news has kind of died in the news cycle. But let's go through this. OPA found that an officer improperly deployed a blast ball that struck a woman in the chest on June 7th. Very high-profile incident. That woman almost died. She had to be resuscitated 3 times. She is permanently disabled and is suing the city of Seattle right now and probably just got rocket fuel for her lawsuit in this finding that, throwing a flashbang grenade directly at a peaceful protester so that when it strikes them, it explodes is not the right way to use a flashbang grenade.
Because I'm sure they were unaware of that too. I mean, the more you read down this list, the worse it actually gets. And I didn't know that that was possible.
Yes. Another officer in this batch of OPA findings has their police body cam as well as mainstream media coverage from NBC News on a live showed them overhanding throwing a CS canister directly at people inside Cal Anderson Park, which is a violation of policy use, and the people in Cal Anderson Park were doing nothing.
Oh, man. Again, just keeps getting worse.
Let's see. Next one out of this OPA. It's Friday night. Got some bad news. Let's just kind of slide this under the rug. Hope it doesn't get covered. Another officer was identified for improperly throwing a blast ball that hit and injured a man who was, according to the OPA, this is the OPA's word, resting in Cal Anderson Park. The officer could not see where he was throwing the blast ball. And so when he threw the blast ball, I will presume it kind of landed in the homeless area or in a tent or something like that and injured a person who was just resting.
So for one thing, why were they throwing them anyway? And second, why would you throw one where you couldn't see where you're throwing it?
I don't know. I can't tell you. I don't know.
Well, common sense evades them.
And then here is the big one. And we're going to tweet this one out, and we're going to amplify this one. Jennifer, you remember that tweet about the IEDs on June 6th? This embarrassing tweet where everyone was like, those aren't IEDs. Those are candles. And nobody threw IEDs at you on June 6th. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, OPA found that the SPD's candle tweet was, in the OPA's word, inaccurate. But the employee that posted the tweet wasn't intentionally dishonest. The employee told the OPA they were pressured by superiors against their better judgment to post it because it was more important to get the news out than for it to be accurate.
So it was more important to shape their particular version of a narrative than to be accurate about it.
Yes, exactly. Because the right-wing media, Fox News, they just latched on to that, and it pun intended, it exploded. And, very quickly, people were like, but it's a candle. And some here in the local affiliates were like, it's a candle. Like, what do you mean? And Seattle police doubled down. Now, there is a person in the Seattle Police Department who has a history of blaming things on the left and exaggerating, and has Fox News on speed dial. Because remember, it was a superior that told them that they needed to get this out.
So it couldn't possibly be the first person we talked about on the list, could it?
Oh, definitely not. I am in no way intimating or implying that it could possibly be that particular person that had their fingers in the pie at that time. There is no way I would be saying that.
Okay, wink, wink, nod, nod. Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. The hits keep coming. We have another weekend news from the OPA because, of course, they don't want this in the news cycle. An unnamed officer that was hired in July of 2017 was fired for referring to an African-American suspect to his co-workers as Kunta Kinte, as a pejorative. If you're not familiar with Kunta Kinte, malcontents, Kunta Kinte is the name of of the pivotal character in Herman Wilkes. Is that, am I getting the name on that right, Jennifer? I'm terrible with author names.
I think so. It's Roots is what it is.
With the book Roots, which was also made into a TV miniseries.
Actually, twice. It was
actually
remade. It was actually remade, and one of my PhD advisors, Stephanie Smallwood, who is an African-American historian who writes on the history of slavery, was one of the historic advisors.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
This is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
The officers complained about the conduct. So the conversation apparently they had as the officers were talking afterwards, and this particular offer was, you remember that Kunta Kinte, and apparently officers complained. So we have that one. That one came out over the weekend. They're having a great 2 weeks.
Yes,
We're
they
not
are.
done, Jennifer. We have Officer Eric Whitehead. He's under OPA investigation, but I know you have a story prepared for that. So we're just going down the chronological timeline. That one came out on Sunday. And then we have this one today. Officer Mika Harmon was caught on body camera referring a homeless man to Cal Anderson Park on August 21st to be able to get services. She goes ahead and advocate that there's shelter there and there's food and people that's going to help her. But Jennifer, there's a small problem. The Seattle police swept Cal Anderson Park on August 14th, and then they went ahead and swept it again on September 1st. And so they were just like, go there. And the Seattle police's position is, well, we just refer homeless people to the closest resource. And mutual aid, which Seattle police raided, threw out, destroyed, ate food from multiple times. And they're sending homeless people there. While simultaneously, Seattle police complaining about the homeless people there. And having, again, a certain person in the Seattle Police Department who has Fox News on speed dial and goes on to Tucker Carlson all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially during that period where he was particularly emboldened and getting a lot of airtime on Fox News.
Well, that's because Seattle and Portland were on fire, burning down probably from that candle IED.
While her body cam was still rolling, she's telling another police officer, referring to Cal Anderson Park, the same park that she referred this homeless person to go to. This should be fucking impounded. It's such bullshit. Like, if we start putting the hammer down on these fucks, and then she kind of drifts off and goes, yeah, so this is the park. Again, referring to Cal Anderson Park. Officer Mika Harmon, she was named in the Seattle Times article. We would have named somebody otherwise, is under investigation with the OPA.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like SPD has a real problem with their officers, huh?
Didn't hit the camera on either one of those. Now, Jennifer, there's another thing that I want to point out here, which is here's that Seattle Times story. Body cam footage captures Seattle officers directing homeless person to Cal Anderson Park for services, which, again, the police knew that they were getting ready to go in and sweep that park. But here at Malcontent News, we already knew that Seattle police was doing that. And we actually reported that all the way back on June 22nd. And Jennifer, I got roasted by people like Safe Seattle and those groups for making it up and lying. The Seattle Police Department has been actively rounding up some of the most troubled souls afflicted by drug addiction, alcoholism, and chronic homelessness and dropping them off at CHOP. And one of the things that I close with is I appeal to the organizers to dissolve the homeless encampment within CHOP and not allow SPD to make society's failure CHOP's failure. I mean, what? Am I some criminal mastermind? Like, how can I... Like, nobody else could see this?
Well, you did create COVID. So, I mean, I am a little bit concerned that you may be a criminal mastermind.
I also got, with the exception of Georgia, because I'll have to check with my people on what we did there.
Okay. Did you do a lot of, Antifa-ing? Vote extra time?
This show is brought to you by Soup. Soup for your family. Yeah. By the way, Malcontents, this is how you know that Antifa was not responsible for the insurrection. There were no cans of soup for the family. There was no aerodynamic bumblebee tuna, and there weren't pallets of bricks waiting inside of the Capitol building.
Yeah. And as many people have also pointed out, if Antifa was there, there would have been mutual aid, all kinds of resources for people. None of that was there.
Anyway, Seattle Police Department is off to a banner start to 2021, and they are losing their shit over at Safe Seattle in the last 48 hours. And on that happy note, Malcontents, we're going to do a little brief pause for the cause and thank our patrons. Hi, Malcontents. I'm David, the Malcontent, and I'd like to talk to you for a moment about supporting independent media. When you support us, you help us bring the before, during, and after. You help us defend the First Amendment. You help us amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices, and you help us hold leaderships at a local, state, and federal level accountable. None of this would be possible without support by viewers just like you. When you become a patron for as little as $5 a month, you help buy technology, safety equipment, and help cover travel expenses so that we can continue to bring you news that you trust. If you can't become a patron, you can do a one-time donation on Venmo, and your dollars will go to the exact same causes. With your continued support, we can continue to amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices while showing the truth on what is happening in the world around us. Once again, thank you.
Initially kind of came in and, said, hey, we're going to have to start moving people. And then a couple other people came in and were like...
If you're a patron, you are going to get Can You Hear Us, our documentary from June 1 to July 4th, this upcoming Monday, a week from today. Our patrons get early access to Can You Hear Us? And then general access will be at the end of February. So if you'd like to get access, and that's at any level. If you want to become a patron, it's real simple. You can go to, here, we'll split screen. It'll be right up there. You can go to patreon.com and look for the Malcontent. For as little as $5 a month, you can help support independent media. If you can't or don't want to, you can go to Venmo, put a couple of dollars in the tip jar, so to speak. Every little bit helps. And I know that I'm excited to get that documentary out. And it is tied to a larger project, but can't talk too much more about that. All right, Jennifer, let's go ahead and jump into story number 3.
All right.
Jennifer, we've got our COVID update. One of the things that we had talked about, Malcontents, on the editorial board, we will be doing 5 fast facts for COVID on at least one time a week. And I think unless there's some really big story attached to COVID, that's what we're going to kind of squish it down into those 5 fast facts. So Jennifer, I'm going to drop you 5 fast facts. There actually is, and I'm not being sarcastic, there is a little glimmer of good news in this, but I don't think it's as good as people think. But we're not going to start with good news. When we were preparing to go on air, it was 399,000 Americans who have died of COVID. And that was as of 9 p.m. East Coast time. So we don't have the full data in. Pretty good chance we will roll over 400,000 tonight. We will definitely roll over 400,000 tomorrow. An American is dying about every 30 seconds from COVID-19. And what we're seeing right now is this is actually from Thanksgiving weekend, this spike in deaths that we're seeing. Jennifer and I both have a cough. It's not COVID.
Yes, yeah.
It takes, like, you get exposed, it takes maybe 2 weeks to get the symptoms, then it takes maybe a week to get sick enough to be in the hospital, and then you might be in the hospital for 2, 3, 4, 6 weeks before you finally succumb from the symptoms. So the spike in fatalities that we're seeing aren't for Christmas. We won't see those until probably when we get into March. So
yeah.
Donald Trump, right before we went on air, what a guy. He lifted the travel restrictions between the United States, most of Europe, including the United Kingdom and also Brazil. The United Kingdom is home of a strain that has even Boris Johnson so convinced, holy shit, that he's basically shut the entire country down. And it was announced last week that Brazil has their own very contagious variant. But Donald Trump is like, no, it's cool. UK, come on to the United States.
Oh, please. That's his, middle finger on the way out the door.
It is a total middle finger on the way out the door. I mean, there's nothing rational or excusable for it. Now, the good news, COVID cases are down in 35 states. I'm not being sarcastic. They are down in 35 states, and they are starting to see the number of hospitalizations and deaths are starting to hit the plateau. But as I said earlier, Jennifer, what I really think that we're seeing here is that Thanksgiving spike is plateauing out. We'll see numbers go down for maybe about 3 weeks, and then we're going to start seeing the Christmas travel spike.
Yeah, so when do we hit the insurrection infections?
It's like, right. And then how many people in that insurrection, forget COVID, how many of them were exposed to UK variant or even worse, potentially South African variant?
Yeah.
In some local news, something that I found out today, we didn't have enough information to run this story. This is one of those trust verified, but not enough to write up a story on it on malcontentnews.com. Thousands of doses of COVID-19 vaccines were lost in Washington state because of the windstorm event last week. And what happened is when over 500,000 people lost power, the chillers and freezers that were required to keep those doses super cold failed. And there's an unknown number of doses that have been destroyed, but it is in the thousands.
Wow, that's great news on the on the heels of last week when, we found out there are no vaccine stores.
Yes, exactly. By the way, there actually is no reserve. This raises questions to me. Why weren't these things on backup generators? Why weren't are you kidding me? Right? We live in an era where you got to be ready for the 9-0. You got to be ready for the 9-0 earthquake. 9-0, 9-0, 9-0, 9-0. Are you kidding?
Yeah. No, I agree.
Rebecca Jones, this is the fifth one. She was originally hailed at the start of COVID almost a year ago as one of the best data scientists in the country and for creating one of the most transparent and accurate dashboards for public and researchers. She was fired by Rob DeSantis, who didn't like the publicity about what a shit show is handling with things in the state of Florida. There was a message that went out through the internal communication systems to employees in Florida a few months ago, imploring them to come forward as whistleblowers if they knew that Florida was cooking the books. Rebecca Jones became suspect number one. Her house was searched. The search warrant was considered very dirty. There was really a lot of questions on the legality of the search warrant. The reality is she has been criminally charged with a felony for sending that message.
So for trying to expose the ways in which, Florida was basically contributing to the intensification of the COVID issue, can potentially do jail time while Ron DeSantis can, save the economy but kill off a bunch of people in the process.
Well, and he's really not saving the economy in Florida. If you look at the number of Disney employees that continue to get laid off, empty hotels, there's no travel going on. And Florida also has one of the weakest safety nets. What a shock for the unemployed.
Yeah. No, I actually had a friend that went to visit family in Florida over the holidays, and he was telling me how insane it is down there as far as like social distancing and masking and things being open, and it's very crazy. And he had to test and quarantined after. But still, I mean, it's insane to me that they do this kind of stuff. People like Ron DeSantis do this kind of stuff and then guise it as necessary to save an economy that clearly isn't reaping any benefit from this.
Basically, yes. So we will continue to monitor the Rebecca Jones story. In theory, man, my throws are off. I'm Jewish white boy. I'm allowed to say it because I am a Jewish white boy. I am showing my Jewish white boy athleticism tonight. So we'll follow the Rebecca Jones story. And it is possible that by the time Joe Biden becomes president of the United States, Chuds,
cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers,
that there could be up to 405,000 COVID deaths, which would equal all of the deaths this country had in World War II. So the only thing worse in American history then becomes the Civil War and the 1918 flu pandemic, and those two are about tied. And a reminder, Malcontents, at 12:01 p.m., Joe Biden, as far as the Republican Party will be concerned, will be responsible for 400,000 COVID deaths.
Mm-hmm.
He will also be responsible. It'd be his fault that there's 8 million more people that are below the poverty line. He will be responsible for the recession, and he will also be responsible for $7.7 trillion added to the national deficit.
I know. I was going to say, don't forget the deficit.
Oh, don't forget that. Yes.
Yeah.
The deficit. Can't forget the deficit.
Yes. Always the deficit.
All right. Malcontents. We're going to go ahead and run another spot, and then we're going to go ahead and jump into our next story.
To the side. Music has a power greater than words can really express. Songbird, sing a song to me. Let me know where I'm supposed to be. It's such a shame, yeah. Well, I was your TV girl. The EP is called Blue, and my website is classicelishamusic.com.
Classic Elijah, she has a voice of an angel, and it was wonderful to be able to film her concert back on August 9th in a very socially distanced way. Her music is available on Bandcamp. It is also available on iTunes. So if you use an iDevice, it's literally a button click away to download her EP Blue. It's also available on her website as a CD. The CD has a bonus track, and it is $15. So please support BIPOC musical artists, because she really is an amazing musical artist. All right, Jennifer, let's go ahead. We're going to do the next one.
All right.
Oh, one other thing. I did see a comment with the question about second doses, yada, yada. Mods, if you can grab that question, and so remind us for that question at the end. So, but I do glance over and read the comments. Oh, it's another Insurrection update, Jennifer. I'm going to go ahead and start because I've actually been talking a lot. And the first Insurrection update that we're starting with is the short one. And then I'll give you the next one because there's a lot to unpack on that one.
Yeah.
So we do have some breaking news. It wasn't breaking news on Sunday. It is breaking news, though it became breaking news on Monday. So Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who basically became a congresswoman by default, there was no opponent running against her because the Democratic opponent running against her withdrew because they were getting so many death threats and were having incidents with their family and at their home. So they actually withdrew out of that race in Georgia out of fear. Way to go, Q disciples. She is deep down the Q rabbit hole. And how deep is it? She's so deep down the Q rabbit hole that Twitter suspended her account. And she ranted and raved about that. But Jennifer, once again, it's amazing, right? Just like her on the issue of the mask. You can't make me wear a mask. And we saw her after the insurrection wearing a mask. She took down a whole bunch of offending tweets to get back up and running on Twitter. And so the breaking news is that she is back up on Twitter again. I have a feeling that's going to be short-lived.
Yeah, absolutely. Was she the one wearing the censored mask?
Yes.
While she's standing there talking?
Yes.
While
she's standing there talking on the floor of Congress, wearing a...
On TV, yeah. Oh, goodness.
They're censoring her! I saw it on TV! She was talking, telling me all about it!
Exactly.
Okay, woo! All right, tell us about what else we got here on the Insurrection update.
Oh, my favorite rep from Colorado, Lauren Boebert, the poster the poster child for stay in school kids. Her communications director ungodly quit just after 2 weeks. There are multiple accusations that Boebert's mother took part in the Capitol insurrection, something Boebert denies, but her mother was indeed at the Capitol on 1/6. Over 60 lawmakers in Boebert's district have called for her resignation for her potential involvement in the insurrection. And she's been blocking people on her private Twitter account despite tweeting information about official government purposes. Of course, this is a 1A violation, and President Trump, almost former President Trump, ran into a similar issue when he tried to block people on a platform where he tweeted out official government information. Rep. Steve Cohen of Tennessee, Democrat, is now stating, quote, "We saw Congressman Boebert taking a large group on a tour of the Capitol between 1/4 and 1/6, end quote. Tours were ceased due to COVID-19, and there's no evidence that anyone in the tour participated in the insurrection. I would like to point out one more thing. She did some crazy things on her Twitter earlier this week where she accused another representative of saying that she was the one leading the tours when he in fact did not say that. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But she pretty much outed herself in those tweets. So whatever happens to her is on her little gun-toting hands.
She is another one that is just like so far down the rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah.
And I think in her case in particular, she is more a poster child of gerrymandering. In the case of Marjorie Greene, I don't know why more people were not outraged that her opponent dropped out of that race because of threats against their life. I mean, this is Russia. This is Nicaragua. This is Brazil. This shit isn't supposed to happen in the United States, but it does because greatness.
It is. Yep.
Oh my goodness. Well, that'll be an interesting to watch. Hey, there we go. That'll be an interesting one to watch. Jennifer, there's been a whole bunch of arrests since we were on Thursday. And now what I'm starting to see is more and more people that are kind of getting in front of cameras because remember, they're censored. That's why they can get in front of, the mainstream media and go, I really regret what I did that day. I mean, I know that video's out there, but that's when I said death to America and overthrow the government, that's not what I really meant. When I punched that police officer, I was actually helping him.
Yes.
And my other favorite one is, the FBI talked to me, but nobody's come by. It's because they're writing your warrant, dummy.
Yeah.
So we're up to over 125 arrested so far. FBI says up to 270 additional investigations ongoing. That investigation number keeps getting bigger and bigger. Let's go over some of these. Jenny Cudd of Texas.
Oh, God. Okay.
She was with a group of people that bragged online about breaking down the door to Pelosi's office. She then deleted the video because clearly then it didn't happen. And she's upset that her flower shop that she's owned has been bombarded with 1-star reviews.
Oh, that's very sad. Very, very sad for her.
Derek Evans, he was the 35-year-old lawmaker out of West Virginia. He was one of the first people identified on January 6th. He streamed himself charging the Capitol. He was unapologetic. He's like, I'm not going to resign. There were bipartisan calls for his resignation out of the state of West Virginia. He was arrested on 2 riot-related charges and then resigned after he was arrested on those 2 related charges.
It's always shocking that, consequences have actions.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
Baked Alaska. Tim Gionette, I don't know. How do you say that, Malcontent? Put it up in the comments. It's Tim Gionette, a.k.a. Baked Alaska. He videoed himself like all through the Capitol doing all sorts of shit. And not only that, he essentially doxed a whole bunch of his compatriots while he was friggin' in there streaming. Like going, hey, Dave Jones, smile for the camera. What do you think, man? Is this cool or what? There was even one person who was like, dude, why did you just say my friggin' name? Anyway, he's been arrested.
I'm trying not to laugh, but the stupidity is pretty funny.
They're afraid of microchips. They're not afraid of GPS.
Yes, exactly.
Jack Jesse Griffiths, Tennessee. He was arrested after an informant identified him as a man known as Juan Bibiano. What is it with the Chuds and adopting Hispanic names?
I have no idea. I've been trying to like figure that out, like historically myself. Why do they see themselves as like conquistadores? Like what is the MO behind that? Is it so that they can say that it's not white supremacy because I have this Hispanic name? Like, right. I don't know. It's been like, I've been racking my brain trying to figure it out.
I ain't Hispanic. My name's Juan. No, your name
Exactly.
is Jack. It's like when you call customer service and you get somebody, it's like, hi, my name is Steve. And it's like, your name is not Steve. Right? Let's just get that really clear, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not hung up on the fact if your name is Kipchoge if you're going to solve my problem, all right?
Exactly.
Emily Hernandez of Missouri was seen holding parts of Nancy Pelosi's office sign on video. She's been charged with 5 criminal counts, also filled with regret.
Of course.
Here's my favorite, Jennifer. This one's my favorite. Jenna Ryan of Texas. She flew in a private jet to the insurrection. Jennifer, this story just gets more friggin' insane. She flew to the insurrection in a private jet because a quote-unquote really cute guy invited me to go. And now I'm going to paraphrase. She was hoping to be able to hook up with him. Jenna did not make a match in her being a terrorist, domestic terrorist on the 6th. Jenna, unfortunately, for her, the dude hooked up with another chick. Forgive me using the word chick. She filmed her before, during, and after, and I don't know any attorney that would touch her with a 10-foot pole because she's talking to any camera, even though they're censored. She is talking to literally any camera the media is putting in her face unapologetically. And best of all, she had the cojones to ask Donald Trump for a pardon.
Oh, Jenna, sweetheart, have you not heard of Tinder? You can set the radius so you don't have to go like 5 miles outside of your, home area. Flying on a private jet to join in an insurrection to hook up with a cute guy. There are cute guys everywhere. That was like the worst use of common sense I've seen related to trying to hook up with someone in a very long time.
It's just really stunning. Robert Sanford of Chester, Pennsylvania, retired firefighter who decided to throw a fire extinguisher down onto 3 police officers, striking, or a group of police officers. He struck 3, including one who didn't have a helmet. This is not Officer Sicknick. This is other officers. This is why I say, it wasn't Antifa, because if it was Antifa, they would have been throwing soup cans and then saying it was for their family. But anyway, and of course this also raises the other question for Robert Sanford. Where exactly did the fire extinguisher come from? Because I'm not aware of fire extinguishers being part of bug out bags or riot bags, whatever you want to call it. The other thing that's been revealed, Robert Sanford was bused for free to Washington, D.C. It's the projection from the right is amazing. So are we to understand that Robert is actually Antifa along with all of these other people? It's like the most amazing double cross ever.
Yeah.
They also found white nationalist items in his home because we know how Antifa loves the Proud Boys and Nazis and white nationalists.
Confederate flags. Yeah.
Sergeant Timothy L. Hale Cusinelli. Sergeant Timothy L. Hale Cusinelli of the U.S. Army Reserve was arrested on 2 criminal charges for his involvement in the insurrection. He's an avowed white nationalist and a Nazi sympathizer. He was in human resources for the U.S. Army.
I just, when they call them sympathizers, why don't you just call them Nazis? Because how can you sympathize with a Nazi without being one?
Could you imagine, this dude is your HR supervisor? Coming into the office? Heil Hitler! What? Oh, no, it's just a test. Sit down. You're good.
Yeah.
You pass. Let me write a note here. Not down with Hitler.
And it reminds me of like that Arthur Miller play Focus.
We have an inclusive HR department.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At the U.S. Army. Daniel A. Baker. He is a former soldier who went AWOL in 2007. He joined the YPG, so he joined with the Kurds in Syria in 2017. He was arrested for issuing a call to arms to confront Trump supporters in Tallahassee, Florida this week. Baker posted flyers on 114 with the call to arms. He was not involved in any way with the 1-6 insurrection, but domestic terrorism is domestic terrorism. And now the Chuds, I gotta play the clip.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
You don't tell all the stories. Yes, we do. One more malcontent. Lisa Eisenhart, the mother of Eric Mutual. Eric Mutual was the dude with the jumping over the chairs all in black with the zip tie handcuffs. She has been arrested for conspiracy charged to violate federal law with her son. They are both facing conspiracy theory charges now. What I suspect is for Lisa, that's a charge to hold her in place. I'm thinking those two, we're going to see much more serious charges come.
Yeah. Can I just say, Lisa, it's, maybe it's time to cut the umbilical cord, let your son go, something.
She's like Betty on 90 Days Fiancé. Is anybody watching 90 Days Fiancé? Does anybody else just want to punch Betty face in as you're watching that this season? Like,
I have not watched it at all.
What's that?
I have never seen it.
Oh my God, it's such an amazing train wreck. It is such an amazing train wreck. And this woman, Betty, because you said helicopter mom. This woman, Betty, is the mother of one of the people in the show. And she is just an awful human being. All right, Jennifer, take it away on the impeachment update. It's so much on this.
Impeachment. So, not one, but two. Impeachment number 2. His trial will actually start in the Senate on 120. And at this time, he doesn't have any legal representation. Because Rudy came out with a bunch of rambling, incoherent stuff about him potentially being a witness, blah, blah, blah. Also, Trump didn't want to pay him, so who knows what's going to happen there. There were also some other statements made today by other lawyers that have represented him in the past about how they were no longer working for him, but were happy to serve or work with him during his time in office. So that's not boding well for him. Rudy Giuliani, of course, we just mentioned, said he was on the team on Saturday. The Trump team denied it on Saturday night. Rudy then stated he would have a role on Sunday morning, and then on Sunday night stated he can't be on the team, of course, because he could be called as a witness. And he basically faces his own legal jeopardy for his 1-6 comments about trial by combat. And a string of phone calls while the insurrection was going on, looking to delay the certification. Hey, if you survive this, do you think maybe you could object to the votes? Kamala Harris resigned her Senate seat on Monday. Alex Padilla was served the last 2 years of Ms. Harris's term and is the first Latino senator from California. He should be sworn in to the Senate on Tuesday, along with John Ossoff of Georgia.
And effectively giving control of the Senate for one day to Mitch McConnell. Still, because it'll be 50-50 and Mitch McConnell for one day.
He better savor it.
There was a comment from Mike Racing Fan. Mike, first of all, I haven't seen your name ever in the comments. Thank you for joining us. That's number one. There was on the Q shaman who was in jail. It is a misunderstanding of the interpretation of what the court said about him getting his organic meals. The court basically did not say you have to feed him organic meals. And the word is he's not getting organic meals.
Good.
We're here to overthrow the government. I want my organic meal. And they call Antifa
Consequences
snowflakes.
for actions, people. Mm-hmm.
And Rudy. It's just like, why does Rudy not have anybody in his orbit saving him? Sidney Powell figured out when to shut up because she's disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Lynn Wood has figured out when to shut up.
Yeah. I think he's just in so deep now, he's like, I might as well just ride this shit show out. What else have I got to do?
He's like Slim Pickens in Doctor Strangelove, riding the nuclear bomb. Woohoo! Woohoo! All right, we got the next one. By the way, Malcontents, just a little thing. If you love our mods, we haven't said this in a while. Spam those hearts. Yeah, it messes with the algorithm and it helps boost us up. And of course, we want to boost the signal. But our mods and admins, they work for free. And they have to read some really awful stuff. So Jennifer and I don't have to read it, and you don't have to see it on the screen. And so with that said, please go ahead and spam those hearts. Let those mods and admins know you love them. If you're on Twitch or if you're on YouTube, you could just go like, thank you mods, love you admins, whatever, or just put a string of hearts. They love that shit. And I know I love it too. All right, Jennifer, I got one for you. Resignations. Health and Human Service Secretary Alex Azar resigns. In his letter to Donald Trump, apparently, he blasts Donald Trump because he says that Donald Trump has stained his legacy. One of the things I want to call out hypocrite Alex Azar is he basically went, oh yeah, the national stockpile for COVID vaccines? Yeah, that doesn't exist. There isn't any. Oh, and by the way, I quit.
Yeah, but wasn't he also on Fox News this morning talking about how Biden was going to, use this to tout his success in COVID that he shouldn't be touting? He was on there spouting some crazy stuff this morning that I happened to catch, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Doesn't he know he can't go on Fox News because now the chuds?
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
They're going to hate him for going on Fox. He should have gone on OWN or Newsmax.
Oh, good old Newsmax. Okay.
All right. You've got some stuff on investigations and ongoing security issues.
Oh, yes. So the American Thinker, a conservative blog, apologized and issued a full retraction of the false claims it made about Dominion voting systems and election impropriety, stating the story had no basis in fact. That's a big shock, huh? Michael Lindell, the My Pillow man, could be facing
he's the My Pillow dude.
Yep. For spreading misinformation about election fraud. And so I was reading something this evening that he was like, bring it on. He was going to turn his cap around and go all bro. Maybe have a pillow fight. I don't know. So yeah, that's where we are. The Dominion voting systems and election impropriety story had no basis in fact. And the pillow dude is getting sued potentially by Dominion, and was like, let's go, because I don't know what his defense is going to be, but whatever. I'm willing to sit and hear it out just for entertainment.
Well, one thing's for sure, he can't say that he heard it on Fox News, read it on American Thinker, or Lynn Wood told him.
Yes.
No longer valid defenses. Why don't you go ahead and take the police, fire, EMS fallout?
All right.
Seriously, Malcontents, this is all since Friday morning.
9 pages of notes, people, 9. So we have 2 Rocky Mountain police officers from Virginia who were arrested for their involvement in the insurrection. Jacob Fracker, and where do these names come from? Okay, and Thomas Robertson posted inside the Capitol because, apparently when you're in the midst of an insurrection trying to overthrow the government, you need to take a couple selfies and post on social media. Jacob Fracker on Facebook bragged about his exploits, also super smart. And Fracker is a K-9 officer. Oh, God. And Robertson is a sergeant. Wow. Virginia's got some police problems, too, huh?
Woof, woof.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, of course, the question is, were there law enforcement officers in a state like Virginia? How much bias and service have they done with the black community?
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
I'm sure they didn't do any bias policing at any time in their career, and that they looked at things with a very clear, clean lens.
I'd wink, but I'm terrible at it, and it would look like I'm just blinking. So.
I don't know if they would see it because you're dropping frames. Malcontent, we're aware that she's dropping frames. We actually tried to troubleshoot it before it went the air, and we got it like a little better. I think it actually is, but it's not where we want to be, and we're going to have some solution for Thursday. That's the bottom line. Unless we're in full-on insurrection, civil war, and then at that point, you're just going to have to see her faces. We're like, and we're into our 37th hour of coverage, and we're waiting for the government to shut the stream down at any moment.
I'm going to snort some coffee grounds so we can keep going.
Let's see, what do we got, Kate? Okay. A man who's bid to become a police officer was ejected after he scored too high on it. What? This is in the comments. He scored too high on an intelligence test. And he lost his appeal in a federal lawsuit against the city. The Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in New York upheld a lower court's decision that the city did not discriminate against Robert Jordan because the same standards were applied to everyone who took the test. Can we get a link for that? Because it is like so hard to believe. You're too smart to be a police officer.
Well, judging by SPD's behavior, that's maybe one of their benchmark criteria.
Oh, no, they just put the link up. And it is from one of our mods and admins.
I don't know.
So there you go. Wow. All right, Malcontent. Jennifer, thank you for the insurrection update. Let's go to our final story.
Okay.
Our national and international audience right now is probably going, "What the hell, Jennifer? Like, will it snow? This is news for you guys." You have to understand. Yeah. If we get like an inch of snow in the Seattle area, it's just paralysis. Everybody freaks out. We call it a French toast emergency at Malcontent News. Yep. My message bot for also the other thing, if you're not familiar with the history. What was that again, Jennifer? Sorry.
It goes crazy. Like people get crazy with the slightest bit of snow. They empty out like grocery stores. There's no bread left. There's no vegetables. Last time it snowed here, it was insane.
Yes. We did have like our little surprise snow overnight, but it really didn't impact anything. It barely stuck to the roads, and it was practically gone in most places in the morning. But it sure was beautiful when it did come down for those few hours. The other thing is, if you've been coming here largely for the news coverage and the weather is news, this whole thing started because of weather. So this is actually us continuing to be true to our roots. And yes, my inbox and personal message box has been kind of starting to fill up a little bit because people are seeing apps on their phones and they're seeing snowflakes towards the end of the week. Is it going to snow? Mm-hmm. It's not going to snow. It's certainly not going to snow of any significance. We have a story up on malcontentnews.com about this. Interesting little tidbits about the first 2 weeks of January. Wettest in history, one of the warmest in history. We were almost 10 degrees above normal temperatures for the first 2 weeks of January. About 9.25 degrees. We got our entire month of rain in about 10 days. We're at 7.45 inches of rain as of the 14th, and I know we've added a little bit to that, but not a whole lot. The weather that we had today, that's what we're going to have tomorrow. Wednesday will be a little cloudier, And then it's going to start to cool down a little bit. But cool down is relative, malcontents. What's going to happen is we're actually going to get normal for January. So instead of being in the 50s, we're going to drop down into the 40s, and our lows are going to be near freezing. There's a little chance for some rain on Thursday. There is no chance of snow on Thursday. And then it'll get a little cooler as we go into the weekend. Now, the other thing, as I always say, number one, these little apps, right, where just have like temperature and like a cloud or a snow, you know, the date, a high, a low, and then like a raindrop or a snowflake or a cloud or a sun. They're AI based and they're garbage. So you can't go by those apps. So what that app is looking at in the AI is the temperature might be below freezing or at freezing. There's a chance of precipitation. So I need to, right? It's a very simple computer program. It's not even AI. It's just a if then or. And then you keep going if then or until eventually you reach whatever that final icon is. So they see that and they throw a snowflake up there. Cold air is drier air. And when I say cold, it's relative. It's actually just normal air. And this air mass that's coming in, there's just not a whole lot of moisture behind it. The other thing that I always tell people, particularly with snow forecasts around here, you go more than 72 hours out, there's just no fidelity in the forecast. So could it snow, say, this time next week? Like, you know, literally this next Monday, the 25th. I would bet against it, but I'm not going to stand up here and just go, no, not happening, absolutely. Do we have a snow event on the horizon? That would be very, very surprising. Anyway, Jennifer, there you go. That's the will it snow. The short answer to that is no. Not a lot.
Well, I feel like I would say that you disappointed my children, but they do school from home anyway, so honestly, they don't really care.
That's right. That's right, kids.
No snow days.
No snow day, kids, unless the power goes out. So, and using a chainsaw to cut down a power pole is a felony.
Yeah.
Unless you do it with 30 other people in a militia with guns. Then the police apparently will just stand there and watch you do it and go, well, there was nothing we could do.
Yes.
Did I say that out loud? All right, this is the part of the show where Jennifer and I answer your questions, malcontents. And I know there were questions because I was glancing over and I was seeing Kellen, hello, up to Kellen and up in the North Sound. Glad you were joining us tonight. Also, Dora, one of our big fans. Thank you for joining us also. Mike Racing Fan, yes, I agree. 72 hours in wintertime forecast is ridiculous. So there was the question on Jennifer, if there's going to be enough doses to do the round 2, based on the fact that we lost a whole bunch of doses in the state, part 1, and then the second thing that there is no national stockpile of doses. I'll give my opinion. You can give your opinion. My opinion is yes, because the last time I saw it, like something only 20 or 30% of the vaccine doses we have in the state of Washington have actually been given out because our state is doing a really shitty job on getting the vaccines out. That's my take on it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that they've been so cautious. Well, one thing, the rollout's been so flawed, and then they're very cautious about who they're giving him to. I agree that I think that will definitely be fine. Also, my mother works in healthcare and she doesn't, they're concerned where she's at, but she seems to think that it's going to be fine through her organization.
So malcontents, I hope we are still on the air because everything in here, the lights had all flickered for just like a tenth of a second. So I don't know if we've been knocked off the air or not, but Jennifer and I will pretend to keep talking to each other. So I was asked to amplify this, and I'm going to amplify it. The head of OPA is going to be on this morning update show with Omari tomorrow at Converge Media. Converge Media is our partner. We partner with them. They partner with us. And anyway, they're going to be on this morning update show, the head of OPA tomorrow. I think that would be worth tuning into.
Absolutely.
Oh, good. You could still hear me for a second. That was like, oh, wow, I really am off the air. People are saying still there. 11 a.m. Rachel, Liberty, 11 a.m. They're going to be, that's at Converge Media every day at 11. You know, there's another thing, Jennifer, I want to circle back. we have a video clip from Washington, D.C. showing the security situation there on the subject of Converge Media. Chris Rojas sent this over to us. And on the subject of partners and all, we have this short little clip. I'd like to go ahead and roll it if that's okay with you.
Yep.
So what Chris told me in a conversation we had last night, if people were watching that little bit of clip, and that's what our nation capital looked like last night, and if you're like, where is everybody and why is it so quiet? That is what everybody is saying, and that includes people that I know people who live in Washington, D.C., and that's what they're communicating too. It is just ridiculously quiet. Nobody is around.
That's interesting because, you know, you have to wonder if they had taken some of those threats about civil war they had prior to January 6th and implemented some increased security if they could have avoided having to do this.
But it was white people, Jennifer. It was white people, and they were not, and they weren't equipped with Bumblebee tuna cans.
Oh, that's right. Yes, white people aren't dangerous, apparently.
Soup for my family. Let's drive everybody's dogs crazy. Chris told me he actually was able to get press access into the red zone on Sunday. Wow. They did not film because they didn't want to show any of the security measures that they're taking in the red zone. And he also said there was almost nobody from press or media that was in there when he went in. It was just like a couple of people. That was it. He also, there was this little clip right at the end. Yeah, wow. That is with the sign. If you saw the sign, Black Lives Matter. This is a small, very, very small group of left-wing aligned protesters that are right on the edge of they're in the green zone on the edge of the red zone. And they said the police were just, all right, fine, they're there, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's going to be an interesting next couple days, I think.
Why is there a public inauguration anyway? Not like Biden will remember. Oh, wait a minute. We've got
It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
Oh, of course.
Of course we do. By the way, Adult Geo, this one's for you.
You're not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
We have buttons just for you. Just for you. That's how
there's always one.
We love when Chuds come on here because you help amplify the volume. So thank you so much for helping with the algorithm to get more people to see the feed. We love you for that. All right. Do we have any other questions, mods? Will there be a Yoda fan club? Shelly, I will say this about Yoda. We had talked weeks ago about merch is coming, and then the world went nuts. And like creating the not even the infrastructure, but creating the hey, here's merch. And one of the things that we said is that merch is combining Malcontent News, Yoda, and Black Lives Matter into one piece of amazing merch. And that's all I could say at this point. We are going to start on Thursday going, we have merch. It's only one item. But anyway, it's something that combines, and also we could say by proxy, Jennifer, it combines your pug.
Yes. His name is Otis. I didn't name him. He came from the Humane Society with the, of course, like standard Otis from Milo and Otis, the movie.
Aww. I think I've watched that movie as a pug fan like 20 times.
Yeah.
Especially because we have an orange cat now.
Oh, okay.
You can get a hella curve with a good can of Bumblebee.
Do we have any other questions, mods? We've bumped up at the top at 9. Jennifer, I think we're going to end on time tonight. We're at 1 hour 30 and 8 seconds.
Wow.
I think we're going to end on time.
Wow.
For Trump attorney, what about Jenna Ellis? What about her? I don't know. Has Jenna Ellis put her, is this a joke, or has Jenna Ellis put her hand up in the air and said, I will be the attorney?
I don't know.
We'll give them a few seconds. It takes a little time for it to go out to the universe. I need to watch Chuds now. It's reference. Where can I watch it? Chuds is a movie from Chud, Chud, C-H-U-D, Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dwellers, is a 1984 movie. It's almost unwatchable, but it's like now has like this cult classic status tied to it. So I wouldn't be shocked if you could just probably find it on YouTube at this point. So... or I don't think it would be too many rabbit holes and through the internet to just find Chud. And then there's a second movie, which is Chud 2, which is nowhere near as good as the first movie. That's with Bud the Chud. This Chud's for you. What? That was the tagline, which is a spoof of a beer commercial.
So Jenna Ellis was the one I was talking about earlier that tweeted that as the president's term comes to an end, so does my role with the Trump campaign. I'm so grateful to POTUS for the opportunity to advocate for his re-election. So I don't know that.
Jennifer, we've actually lost a chunk of your audio there. I only heard about half of what you said, and it was the most important half.
Oh, okay. So I don't think Jenna Ellis is going to be repping Donald Trump in the context of impeachment, because she put out a tweet earlier today that I referenced earlier where she basically thanked him and said her time with the Trump campaign had come to an end and she was going to go fight for conservatism elsewhere.
There's this meme that I saw today, which was the person, like they're at an interview, goes, so there's 4 years missing on your resume. Can you explain? Were you working for the Trump administration? Yeah. And the person's like, I was in prison for those 4 years. I swear to it. So, and on that note.
I sent that to the chat today.
Yeah, yes. So, inauguration coverage. We will be doing inauguration coverage on Wednesday. We typically pull from C-SPAN or another feed where we're not kind of trampling on rights and permissions. So we're going to find a source for that. We will go on the air as kind of the prep starts to go on the air. We generally don't show the talking head channels because Jennifer and I are your talking heads. And then, of course, Jennifer, you got crap going on at school. But one of us, both of us, some of us will be here covering the inauguration. And hopefully we just cover an inauguration. And then we go, okay, cool, inauguration's over.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Malcontents. I would say that's it. And Jennifer, once again, thank you so much.
Yep.
And Malcontents.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We will see you on Wednesday for the inauguration, or we'll see you on Thursday for happy hour when we have the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden. Malcontent, out.
Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron Make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile. You're the malcontent.
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
Antifa, fuck you! You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.